So next up, our session is focused around the art of the pivot to a degree. So sometimes you start out thinking you're going to build a business around one thing, and then lo and behold, something happens, or somebody else does it, and you decide, like, maybe I have to do something completely different, or maybe it's around pivoting around your funding, whatever it might be. So to moderate this session, we have the fabulous Kate Sokoloff. Kate, welcome. Come on board. There's a microphone there, you pick up one of those. Kate Sokoloff was one of the first people I met in Portland. She's a total badass. Kate founded Livewire. Anybody listen to Livewire? Kate was one of the founders of Livewire. Yay, give it up for Kate. She's also the founder of Portland's only community choir, which is known as the OK Chorale, which if you have not been, you should check it out. Even if you have the worst voice in the world, you get to go and you sing. I went to the planetarium when David Bowie died with Kate, and what, about 400, 500 other people? And we dressed up like David Bowie, and we sang and cried, and it was an amazing experience, I have to say. And Kate's a badass namer, so she named Revolution Hall, she names things. So if you ever need anything named, or need a name for your business, or for your product, she is the person to go to. Babies, dogs, yeah, ex-boyfriends at work. So Kate is going to moderate, and I sort of sprung this on her a couple of days ago. So, we said we'll build it as a conversation. And then the next person who's going to be on the panel is Karen John. Karen, come on. Karen is the CEO and founder of Heartwork, which is the most amazing furniture company. Karen, I met years ago in New York, and she was consulting with some very fancy firms like Design Within Reach. She's the most overeducated designer I've ever met. She's got like MBAs, PhDs up the wazoo, and she designs the most incredible, colorful, brilliant furniture at Heartwork. Her niece is here today too. Hi. And Karen very kindly agreed to come over here from New York because she could not have got her business off the ground without coming to Portland. She basically gave up her life in New York and moved here, and she manufactures here, and she'll tell you more about her own story, but she's a total badass, so I'm so glad you could join us. Thank you, Karen. And then we have the fabulous Lisa Q. Fetterman. Lisa, woo! Lisa is the founder and CEO of Nomiku and Nomiku Meals, and a lot of you have heard her already over crowdfunding, but this girl does not need any introduction. She can more than happily introduce herself. And then finally, we have the fabulous Michelle Batista. Michelle is a proprietress of the Nightwood. Come on, Michelle. I feel like I'm doing a beauty pageant here. Wave, ladies, wave. And Michelle has had a number of pivots in her life and her career, and she can also speak to that. I'm going to give you ladies this microphone, so take it away, Kate, and you can share just three microphones for four. Okay, so figure it out. Bye.
Oh, and it's on. So usually when I have a microphone here, I'm making you all sing Get Lucky or something like that. So consider yourselves warned for next time you see me with a microphone. I'm so excited to be doing this panel. I think all of us have pivoted a lot in our lives, our careers, our jobs, whatever we're doing, we're pivoting all the time. I worked for an agency once where we had a campaign, and the slogan we came up with, what this client did, was they turn what the fuck into holy shit. And I was thinking about how pivots are really that what the fuck moment, and our job is to turn that into a holy shit opportunity. So I'm really excited to have three masters of the holy shit with me today, with all of us. And you've heard a little bit about them already from Susan, so I'm gonna just kick it off and have each of them tell you a little bit more about what they do, and then I'll have some questions for each of them. Karen?
So my name is Karen John. I started Heartwork in 2012. It's Heartwork because I do believe you should do what you love, and I had a background in design and furniture, and I wanted to create a company where we could design and manufacture furniture for creative spaces, but really to help shape creative cultures. I think for me, I've always been most fascinated in kind of the individuals, teams, and ideas that come out of these great businesses, and so I'm inspired to create furniture that hopefully can make everyone able to do their best work. So.
Hi everyone. So I invented the home sous vide immersion circulator, like for real invented it. Yes. Every single top chef in the world uses my machine, whether it's Noma, Saison, Restaurant Meadowood, Departures here in PDX, Portland. Why did I use their airplane code? Anyways, yeah. So I've written 2 international best-selling cookbooks, 1.3 million done on Kickstarter, went on Shark Tank, 3 different devices, 3 separate pivots. I've had intense competition among, versing me. One of them actually was one of my earliest angel investors who divested from my company, became the CEO of Anova, which was my head-to-head competitor, sold it for $200 million. He sold it for $200 million to Electrolux last year. What? I know. So and they had tens and tens of millions of dollars to beat me down, and I was like, "Come at me, bitch. I'm ready." And each time that I cannot outspend you, I will always out Lisa you, because you can't Lisa your way up. I invented Nespresso for dinner. That's my latest thing with sous vide. Sous vide is hard for a lot of people. So what if I just ship you the food myself, tap it, it automatically recognizes the time and temperature, and then you just drop it in. And you can put multiple things at the same time because it's already pre-sous vide, and folks will get to taste this afterwards and tell me what's up. And that's it. And here's one of my cookbooks here, and no other sous vide company does this. People were definitely copying me super hardcore on the hardware. Like, they're like, "Oh, we'll make it look like a stick," after my first one. After I made it Wi-Fi, people were like, "Oh, I'll add a Wi-Fi to my machine, but I don't know the reason that you did it." I'm like, okay, now I'm doing something that none of you will freaking touch, which is food. Because y'all don't be chefs.
She's a little bit scary. Howie, I guess.
Just, for those of you who are not my competitors, we're just like, rah, together. For those of you who may be my competitors in the audience, come at me.
Okay, I'm Michelle DePista. I'm definitely not the Lisa effect, but I think we'll be friends.
I never would have called you quiet before this moment.
I don't know what you're doing. No, I'm not quiet. Pivots. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a master of pivoting at this point, but my most recent endeavor is that I own a women-owned, led-run, funded female collective in the food space called the Nightwood Society. So, I think some of you know and have been, and good. So we're a year old now. My number 2 is over here, Leah, who runs all the things. Everybody likes her more than me, so it's good. She's my Lisa. She's quieter. Anyway, so I think we're going to talk a little bit about how we all got here, but that's where I'm at today. I'm also a designer by trade, and I have a design consultancy as well. So Katie Reardon, my business partner, who couldn't be here with us today because she's in New York with Nike as her day job. So, we're pivoting all the time between all the forces, but at this point, I feel like this is what it takes to make an impact, and we're a values-based business just trying to make an impact, so.
Great. You've talked about your company as being kind of a living organism and where adaptation is sort of essential to your survival. Whether it's things like technology and consumer taste and, economic shifts like steel tariffs. How do you stay ahead of all of those factors? How do you see them coming at you from every direction? Are there questions you ask yourself? And could you walk us through some examples of when you're dealing with that?
Sure. Is this on? Hello? Okay, good. So a couple of things. I think the pivot, the idea of the pivot, I think I've always thought of it less as like this once or twice event and more of like an ongoing way you approach growing a business, because a business is a living organism and things are constantly changing. And I think it's less about anticipating and how you respond to it. So I think if I were to think back of some of our pivots, when I started my previous life, I had started product development for Design Within Reach, and I actually looked at the workspace market and thought, okay, what if we start kind of like the way they did with selling other people's products off the shelf, get some traction, and then begin to develop our own product. But then I realized part of the problem was there really wasn't that much great product. So I had to then, my first pivot was deciding that I was actually going to develop our own product, which then put me in a whole other different situation. I had to figure out, okay, what category, how do I start? I ended up actually picking storage, which I remember the night I decided, I woke up the next morning like almost like panicking, like, am I going to be the storage lady if I start with storage? Will I ever get out of storage? I love storage, but I think the funny thing was I looked at the market. It was like 20-25% of every architecture project for commercial spaces, and everyone was looking at storage as a commodity and not as a design product. And so I thought it's actually the perspective that you use. I think versus like how you kind of can anticipate what you're going to need to do. So that was one of my first pivots. I think one of the seconds was that I actually had this romantic idea, not just that Heartwork should be about doing what you love, but that like everybody was quitting their day jobs and I was going to help them with their office. And then I figured that those people actually go to IKEA. And so what was cool was though, we ended up connecting with a lot of larger architecture firms, and that really opened me up to a much even larger prospective commercial client. Which we then had to really shift how we went to market, eventually how we built our sales team, but really kind of helped us incubate the company. And then I had another pivot because we got a lot of traction with a couple Fortune 500 companies, one very close to here and one in Silicon Valley. And it was wonderful because in a way they funded our R&D. We were able to really perfect kind of our manufacturing product development approach and how we kind of integrate all the requirements and are able to kind of have this more of like a responsive product development cycle for furniture. But then quite honestly, we also had the feedback from the market, which was like, okay, do you want two clients to be do you want to be a custom job shop? And my vision was always to build a bigger brand. And so I had to step back again and say, okay, how do I get there? So it's a little bit of like ongoing judo, but I think it's also what keeps it exciting, because I think that, I guess the one thing I wanted to add that you and I talked about was, at the end of the day, I think the thing that kills any business is really complexity. And so I think pivoting is also like this constant opportunity to look at like, how do you further try and simplify and focus on who you want to be and how you are showing up as a team, as a company, to your clients and partners and everything. So,
Lisa, what you do right now, what your offer is right now, is significantly different than your piece of hardware. You were originally a hardware company. How did you? I haven't like told anyone what you're actually doing now, so I'm gonna let you talk about that shift and what the process was like.
Definitely. So when I first started this company, I thought I had invented the absolute future. When I worked under Mario Batali and Jean Georges and all these other 3 Michelin-star restaurants in New York, I saw they used this huge hulking piece of laboratory equipment that was $1,000 and up. The magical thing was that even though I was the grand manger, which is a very fancy word for salad maker, I could touch it and I could make delicious things with it consistently, and so could the executive chef. I was completely bowled over. It was like looking to the future. I mean, if I was going to go to 94 Lisa, I would have been like, buy Apple stock. This is like the next best thing for me. And I did the most with the capital that I had at the time. When I first started, the capital was my personal credit cards. So I made a DIY open source sous vide kit. First product, DIY open source sous vide kit, and I traveled to maker spaces all across the United States to teach people how to make their own DIY open source sous vide project. I would spend 6 hours holding people's hands, making them solder the thing. Literally sometimes, because they're afraid to solder. And I was like, this is not sustainable. There's no way. I can't do this, but also how much value would people get if they could just plug it into the wall? So then I went to China, and then I made a prototype for the first ever home sous vide immersion circulator. And then we launched it on Kickstarter, and we made $1.3 million on Kickstarter through 2 projects for it. After my first machine, I was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm a multi-billionaire. People People like, all you have to do is turn on this machine and put food in a bag and put it in the water. That's it. Like, wow, done. You know. Then I went to people's homes to see how they used it, and they were like, we're not using it, Lisa, because one, I don't know the recipes, and I'm uncomfortable cooking this way. I just don't know the time and temperature, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, shiz. But when I'm there and I'm talking to them constantly, they use it and they love it, and I can give them the recipes. So I was like, don't worry, I got you, fam. First of all, I'm gonna write an international best-selling cookbook, which I did. And the second way is like, I'm gonna teleport myself inside of your machine through Wi-Fi with an app. I'm gonna have the recipes inside of it, and literally now, all you have to do is put your food inside of a bag and put it in the water. That's it. And then they were like, actually, I went to people's homes again to see how it worked this time. Now with the cookbook, now with the app, now with Wi-Fi, and they still had trouble, dudes. Like, and I would thank them for letting me creepily stare at them in their house while they cook, because like they'll tell you, people will always tell you what they want, but it's not what they need. And then I figured it out at the end. They would always tell me the same joke. So I went to about like 40 homes. They would always, every one of them, said the same joke to me. Lisa, could you just cook for us every day? Lisa, could I just cook for you every day? Basically, by my 20th house, I was like, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And I started like partnerships with local grocery stores to make these DIY packages. First, I started with raw ingredients. I was like, now you can cook from scratch, from raw. Just literally drop it in. No, people don't plan ahead. They can't wait. They can't wait for it to cook. So then we made it fully sous vide ready. Like, we sous vide it perfectly. It's frozen at peak freshness, and then we ship it to you. And check this out, you don't have to touch it. I also built an RFID chips on the food and on the machine. All you do is tap it and put it in. It's exactly like Keurig or Nespresso for dinner. Now, are you happy? They are. We grow 25% month over month. And moreover, I'm just happy to like innovate on something. I just can't believe, actually I do know why, and I do know why this hasn't been invented before. Like, Keurig for dinner, doesn't that just sound like it already exists? It does. but not before me. And the thing is, like, people who are caretakers for the home and are in charge of food have always been neglected and a hidden economy by everybody else who's made hardware or things for the kitchen. They just, when people make like revolutionary hardware, they say it's for the living room. I remember when Charlie Tyndall made the Amazon Alexa, and I was talking to him, he's like, oh, this is for the living room. I'm like, dude, when my hands are filled with raw chicken, I want to yell at something. Yeah. Lo and behold, 70% of placement of Alexa is inside of the kitchen. He inadvertently made one of the biggest kitchen appliances of all time. What? And so, like, what happens if somebody does that on purpose? And each time that I pivoted, it was always like really scary and very, very dramatically new from the product I did, but it always followed one common thread, which is our tagline inside the company, which is, we are here to eradicate every obstacle between you and a delicious plate of food. So every time that we made a pivot or something that was a super, super dramatic change, we're like, does it go with that tagline? Does it go with our core mission? If it's yes, then woo, let's do it. If it's no, then we don't do it. Like, even when we buy swag, right? It's like, like, Lisa, we want to promote this company and we want to buy t-shirts for it. I'm like, okay, fam, okay, what's up? And then I'm like, does this eradicate every obstacle between you and a delicious plate of food? And they're like, no. I'm like, no then! You can't buy those t-shirts!
Aprons, Lisa.
Not yet.
Can I ask, I just asked Lisa one quick follow-up question. You really cultivated that community both through threatening them in their kitchen and finding them online, and they were giving you feedback. How did you sort of aggregate that feedback and really make the decision to pivot?
First it's like, data, like how many times people are saying the same thing to me.
Okay.
So like if somebody says it one time, sometimes my employee will come to me and they're like, oh Lisa, somebody said this, and it was like traumatic for them because the customer was really unhappy. And I was like, how many customers said that? Oh, one? Okay. Put it in the spreadsheet. And let's see how many people say those things over and over again. One is like, how many things are people saying, and what do you notice over and over again? People won't say things. People won't say things, but they'll show you things if you just sit and watch them do it, which is why it's so important. You just have to sit and watch somebody with your product. And not necessarily for us, because we're a home appliance and we're so integrated and we're Wi-Fi connected and part of the home, like a hub. I really actually need to watch people in their environment. And I am way more chill inside your home. And I cook for you to thank you for having me over.
That's great. Mission.
And now I literally cook for you anytime. I literally cook for you. You can buy my food. The porcinis are foraged by me for the wild mushroom risotto. Try it.
She has children, by the way, in case you weren't intimidated. Michelle, who also has children who are here and are awesome young women. So you pivoted from the world of shoe design to food and hospitality and really community building by creating the Nightwood Society, which is fantastic, by the way. What led to that change in course for you personally and from a business point of view too?
Well, first of all, I would say I love sitting as the third person in this panel because I can relate. So I'm a product designer by trade, so I relate to furniture and my time in that world, and then now in food. So it's really fun, I think, this panel to have us all represented here. That's exciting to me. For me, the biggest pivot in my career was from product to experience. And when you engage a product, when you design a product, if you're a good product designer, you know, you're thinking, especially as I've worked with product designers now all of my career, 25 plus years. If you're not thinking about the experience by the consumer, by the user on the other end, you're failing. You're failing. That's the point. If you're going to design this ottoman or this sous vide machine or storage, if you're not thinking about your consumer first and how they're going to engage with that product, it's just stuff. And so I've spent all of my life trying to cultivate things in my own life and for other people that they would love. And so there was a moment, probably about 8-9 years ago, and I was at another trade show. I had been working in footwear for a long time, first in corporate for 8 years, and then as a consultant now. I've been a consultant now, this is 17 years. And the design consultancy that I still run is called Stockpot, because now it's more food focused than product focused. But I was at this trade show in Las Vegas 8 or 9 years ago, and I just looked up and I thought, I just can't do this anymore. There is so much shit out there, and I don't want to add more shit to the world. And I spent 20 years of my career going to China, somebody can't hear me, and watching things come off the line and just thinking the same thing. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to have a different relationship to people and to the consumers on the other end. Now, you can't get that out of your blood. I want to give people something, so I invested in experience, and that experience was through food and community. And so when we started Nightwood a year ago, and I'd started another private event space before that, for me, owning a space where we can connect with people on a more intimate level is far more important than running a restaurant. Sort of running a restaurant and being a part of a restaurant is sort of like adding more shit. No, I don't mean it's sort of like putting more shoes in the world. It's not, I didn't want to just crank out that same thing every day. I wanted to have a conversation with the people on the other end. I wanted them to know where their food came from. I wanted to teach them something. And so having a space where we're curating for a consumer in mind, whether that's a private event for your husband's 50th birthday party or your wedding or your bat mitzvah or one of our programmed events, That was really important to me because it starts a conversation and allows us to have a conversation with you and sit there with you and talk to you about what we're doing and where the food came from. So that was the biggest pivot for me, and it took me, it was a hard pivot, and it took me about 4 good years to really find my footing, and probably 6 years to decide, like, oh, this is my life, and I'm in the right place, and I can do this. Because with that pivot comes a lot of, as a woman, you're not good enough, you don't know what you're doing, you're not a chef, whatever that thing is that you're told. And so when we opened the Nightwood, we decided, one, when we started building the idea of the Nightwood, it wasn't about all women at first. That was an oh shit moment that I actually had a dream and woke up the next day and called my business partner and said it has to be about all women, which she said okay. It was that easy. And then we pulled the community together and built this dream for ourselves. But the idea was that we were values first, and that we were investing in a value economy and a human, in human equity, and that those would lead every decision that we made, just like about your transformation of how that gets to someone and how quickly it gets to someone and how you can help them make better food faster. Ours was about, human equity. How do we invest in women? How do we bring women together and build a safe space in a community for them to flourish? How do we set that up so we can share our own skills, learn from one another, and pass that on to the next generation? And then feed everybody in the process really wonderful food. No big deal.
Sometimes that pivot happens because of what's going on in the zeitgeist. And I think when you and I met and you were just about to launch your successful Kickstarter campaign, all this stuff about these chefs was coming out in the news about the Me Too moments of chefs. And I remember thinking, wow, you saw that coming in some magical way and were able to make sure that those messages were in. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, Kate, we ran a successful Kickstarter a year ago, December, it funded. And Susan was helping me. We had met not that long before. Oh, there she is. She had started helping us sort of get through the video and get it all launched. We were running a Kickstarter at a horrible time at the holidays. And Katie and I sat down to talk about what are the rewards, to your point. Like, I don't want to do a t-shirt. I don't want to, this was not the part of values that we were seeking. And it was Christmas. And we were trying to raise $50,000 for an event space, an idea about women and food. How hard could it be? And then we sat down to talk about the rewards, and we said, well, we don't want to have rewards. We want to, so we instead, it was a total gamble, and everybody said it wouldn't work, and it did, but we decided to set it up like a registry. So if you believed in the idea, you could invest in a table or a chair or a set of china, and then your name plate would be on that table, on that chair, that you would be a part of the community, which was the whole point. And so instead of sending out things to everyone, the only thing that we did a bag, a little tote bag for the market, which was the only thing. But more people invested their name, say, into the place than the thing. I mean, we had a really good tagline, which maybe Kate had something to do with. And so we did the future of food is female, and that was what was on the tote bag. So did I answer the question? What was the question?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, you did. So, we often talk about challenges that women face as entrepreneurs. It's partly why we're here. But I'm curious to see how you see some of the benefits of your gender. Do you think it can play a positive role in your ability to pivot? And can you talk about that? Yeah. She's scaring me again.
I'm just playing. One great thing is that we can see things. We have such a unique perspective that the other half literally cannot see. They're like, there's this thing. People say, getting woke. Then people are literally asleep. The other half are literally asleep to these things. One big thing that we see is is this, like, technology and the kitchen have always binded together. And that seems like a huge, like, revolutionary leap to some people. But for a lot of folks who have dominated the home kitchen, women, we've always migrated technology there. For instance, when the internet first came online, it broke every day, not because of porn, not because of high-speed stock trading, because at 4 p.m. every day, women would log on and look for recipes on the internet. That is what would break it. And tablets, like iPads, those things, died for all uses, basically. They were all highly disappointed, the men behind the hardware and the software for those, they were all highly disappointed by its sales, except for the sales and placement for the kitchen. It became a strategic kitchen tool. Same thing with the Amazon Alexa. Like, because we know like exactly the needs of the kitchen and exactly the needs for organization, not even that we know needs, even that we just understand the psychic pressure of parallel processing the second job of making dinner and going through your career. It starts at like 2 p.m. for me. Even though I am the founder and CEO of my company, my family knows I'm writing a cookbook, right? I'm writing a cookbook at night, I'm writing something during the day, and when I come home at 7 o'clock, the children are on the floor, and my mother-in-law looks at me and she goes, "What's for dinner?" Yes, it's not right, but it's true. And in my family, my mother-in-law is vegetarian, gluten-free, dairy-free. My husband is vegetarian. My son has PKU, which means that it's a rare genetic disorder where you have to have a very specialized diet, and we have to watch it like a hawk. And then my daughter, who's 1, I'll make food for her. She'll look at it and throw it to the ground, and then I have to make another meal. So I wound up making 5 separate meals every night for my family. My background is in the kitchen, so like I can physically do it. But like, I don't fucking want to do that. So I just invented it. Like you see there, I have 5 different hermetically sealed meals for different dietary restrictions. If somebody in my family is allergic to nuts, I'm not gonna kill them now. So go ahead, family, and develop more allergies. I got you.
So I'm gonna kick the same question to Karen too.
That at the end of the day, I think we show up as women really based on things like, I think, connection and meaning, and I think those have actually been super valuable when it comes to even something I didn't expect, like creating relationships with new manufacturers, which has typically been a very male-driven, and I would say, I guess, I've met a lot of manufacturers who I feel like in a way are kind of recovering from like PTSD because they're used to working in this very kind of mean transactional way versus like, hey, let me share my vision for what we're trying to do. Let's talk about your vision and see how we could work together. And then let's actually have conversations when things are difficult and try to work them out. I think some of them are still a little shocked sometimes, because I think that they're used to a different culture. And I think that we bring that, and I think it can be a great thing. And I think it's also been a great thing for my team that we have in terms of helping to build the culture, and I think it's what I get from them as well. So,
Michelle, talk a little bit, if you would, about fear. I think we all think we're going to start something new. That's the scary thing, the decision to do it and tell everybody and tell your friends, because then you have to do it. And then you think you're done with fear, like, hey, I'm not afraid anymore. But that doesn't always seem to be the case.
Fear is a big one. I talk to women a lot about fear. None of this is easy. And it's all scary. And for any woman who has started a business, wants to start a business, is thinking about starting a business, one of the first things I tell young women, all women, when they come to me about this is, it's going to be really scary. And there's no way around that. It's about how you manage the fear for yourself. And everybody has their own techniques. I think it's practice and learned. And it never goes away. As long as you are an entrepreneur, you are going to be scared. And I am not afraid of fear, and I would say I'm absolutely not fear adverse, and I still sleep pretty well at night, most nights, but you have to train yourself, and I've used this so many times. My therapist I should tell her how many times I've talked about this. Something super simple to do, but it works for me, is that she told me when we were opening the Nightwood, I was off the wall. I was insane. I was crazy. I was not well. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was worried about everything. I thought it was like going to ruin my daughter's lives who are over there in that room watching TV, so clearly they're fine. But I went in to see her, and she just looked at me, and she was like, you can't keep doing this. And I was like, okay, well, do I stop? And she was like, no, you can't stop. You're on this mission, and it's a really good mission, and you're helping all of these people, and it's really important. So we have to figure out how to like put it in a box. And I was like, okay, well, what's the magic box? I want to do that. And she said, you're going to assign time to worry about all of the things. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And she said, I want you to assign time, like whatever that time looks like for you. Maybe it starts with an hour a day and you work it down. I want you to work it down to 15 minutes a day. And you're going to say, okay, I'm going to worry about all of the things from, oh, food's ready. Food's ready to eat right there.
What else do you worry about?
So she was like, worry about that thing from 8 to 8:30. And basically assign the time, put it in your calendar, and then you're going to sit down, just like you meditate and everything else, whatever you have in your life that helps you manage, and you sit down and you worry about bills and children, and if you're being an awful mother, and whatever the things are. And it was so simple, and that totally changed my life, because it allowed me the space to be like, well, it's kind of like working out. Okay, I got to the gym. One less thing. I did it. I can move on. Now I'm going to go and drink wine and have food or whatever. And it was the same mentality, like, oh, I worried about it that day. I did it. Okay. I don't have to do that anymore. Now I can go have fun and try to build the future for my children. But that was huge for me. And I think this goes back to before when we were talking about pivoting in women. I think this is one of the gifts of being a woman, is that I don't believe in multitasking. I don't think that's a real thing, but I do believe in pivoting. And I think the women that have the most success in business, life, whatever, are the women that train themselves to pivot quickly. And so, I sort of tell my daughters, like, when they talk about multitasking, I'm like, nope, multitasking is actually not real. Read the data. Like, it actually you can't do it effectively, and it makes you ineffective in lots of ways. But if you're walking down the hallway and you get stopped by someone on your board, and you turn to him or her and you talk to them about that thing, and then you turn, and then your product designer is standing there with something in their hand, and they need you to sign off on the way that this couch gets screwed together. And if you can train yourself to pivot your brain right to left between all of the things that are needed from you in the day, I think that's the magic of women. We're men. I know there's some in the audience. This is not a slight. I think this is just a dynamic difference of the way our brains work. Men get very invested in a thing. And it's like that thing until it's done, right? Like knocking down the pins. 1, 2, 3. It makes them very effective in like crossing off their list. But women are able to weave, this is the serpentine part of women in a way. So to me, that's a pivot. That's not multitasking. So train yourself to pivot. It will make you very successful in life, like all around, not just business, but I think just in life, because it also lets you have an open mind then to talk and deal with different problems and people as they come to you.
We are going to pivot now to all of you. I'm sure you have some questions here.
I wanted to ask a question about backlash and how you might manage backlash, because you all are like really, really senior, and you all might be, having labels applied to you that maybe you don't intend, and how research shows it's really hard for women to be perceived as both competent and warm. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
I want to answer. And also, I do the same thing as you, too. I make time for myself. I give myself deadlines. They're like, okay, you feel really fucked up about this. You can feel fucked up about it for a week. Or you can feel fucked about it for a day, and then you have to let it go. It's very effective. I learned it from the SEAL Team 6. So this
Where we take all of our therapy and relationship tips, by the way.
So what happens with the elite SEALs teams is that once they finish with the Army, they mostly become entrepreneurs. And I'm one of the mentors for the elite program. So I was like, how do you handle it when your friend gets shot right next to you and dies in front of you? They're like, real question. They're like, well, I take a week to feel fucked up about it, and then I move on. I'm like, great, me too. Yeah, seriously. Tattoo on my eyelid. A lot of people call me a lot of things, and Silicon Valley is super small, and I'm very, very intense. And how I do it is, one, I allow myself to feel fucked up about it. I do. I don't squash those emotions. I'm like, this made me feel sad. And I work so hard, and I really do care about people, and people think that I don't care. Oh, fuck. You know? I just let myself feel bad, and then I nip it in the bud, and then I just keep doing more. I'm just like, whenever I feel backlash, I just let it fuel me. I first make it sadness, and then I make it anger. And then I use that anger to work 1 hour more, or something like that, or do something extra worky to bury it and crush it.
Not sure who's mentoring who in that relationship with the SEAL team.
I totally agree with what they said. And I think backlash or whatever you want to decide, one of the hardest things, when you decide to start your own company is it's like this, well, first of all, good or bad, I think it's the fastest path to personal growth because you're constantly having to grow. But I always go back to I had a hairdresser when I was a kid that used to say, before you take a compliment or an insult, look at the source. I don't know why I picked that up at 10 years old in the chair, but that was really helpful. So I think that's really important, but I do think try to turn it into something constructive. So if I get a comment sometimes from an investor that I'm like, God, why the hell do they think that, right? Instead of me saying, oh, because they're idiots or they don't think this, I think and they are, but then it is my job to figure out I'm clearly not communicating this in the way that it's coming through with the vision or the idea that I intended, and that's on my responsibility, but it's also something that gives me value too, because as I perfect that and grow, then they and other people. Having said all that, I think that you really need to detach yourself from giving a shit about what too many people think, because I think that you cannot lead anything if you care. You're the one defining the vision. It's your job to see things before they're able to be shown, and so there's going to be a lot of naysayers. There's going to be, but the beauty is we're so lucky that I think too, we're in a big market. There's a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of room for a lot of ideas. So as long as you focus on yours and take it to the finish line, I think there's a lot of opportunities.
My question is, it might be obvious to some people, but how do you go from just having an idea, a concept of a product, and having it come to a tangible fruition?
Working on what is accessible to me that day, on it every day. So every day I do something. When I just first started, when I was 22, just graduated from college, I didn't have any career experience, not a very strong professional network, and I just did what I could that day on it. But I always furiously worked on it daily. It wasn't the end-all hardware product. When I first started, I wrote a blog, so I would make sure to be very disciplined. I have to do this blog entry, even though I'm just screaming into the fucking void. At least I'm getting disciplined about my work ethic here against my idea. And then I would build my community. So I would look for hashtag sous vide on Twitter, and I would build people, and I would keep collecting them. So then when I am actually ready to sell something, have something to sell, I have a base to sell it to. So every day I just did whatever was in my means to do it, but I just did not quit it. There wasn't a day that I took a break and said, oh no, I'll just take a break from this. It's not gonna happen. Why bother if it's not the big thing? Then I won't do it. So every day I was like, I can get to there, and I will. I just need to be disciplined and do whatever I can that day.
I want to add something to that too, having started a couple of organizations. I call it act as if, which means I have the idea and I tell everyone I'm going to do it if the idea has stayed with me and it's all I can think about. And then I tell influential people who I would be very embarrassed to back out of doing that idea. I call it like throwing a grenade in front of people who could make a difference one way or the other. And I act as if it's happening. And I won't say I lie, I will say I'm a very good storyteller. So I am able usually to convince people, including myself, that it is in fact happening, and then it's too late because it is.
How do I go if I want to invent this water bottle and it's just an idea in my head? How do I make this something that I hold? How do I go to a water bottle making company?
Okay, yeah.
That become a thing.
Right. Okay, so I'll tell you straight up, like first I looked at the bill of materials that I would need for a prototype. So I was like, here, I need a heater, I need a logic board, I need all these things. And then I went to Taobao.com, which is where Chinese manufacturers have specific parts. And then I listed all of the manufacturers that were selling these things, and I had their phone numbers. I picked a time to call them all. And I called them, I made appointments with them in China, and then I went to China and then visited all their factories. And then I went just on Google, and I Googled manufacturing MSAs, manufacturing like master contracts, and I made contracts with all of these people inside those factories. So the physical step of doing it is, one, I talked to other people who also had successful hardware things. It wasn't necessarily my sous vide machine. I contacted the people who ran Pebble, the smartwatch, and I asked them, how did you do it? They gave me their step-by-step as well. And I was like, okay, I can just emulate that for that. So for instance, for your water bottle, I would just contact the CEOs of those water bottle companies. And if you're making something similar to another company and they went through Y Combinator, everybody's founder email is founders@company.com. It's always founders@company.com. Y Combinator makes you make that email so that they can always email all founders in case of an emergency. I use it all the time for email marketing. But first I talk to people with similar businesses to mine, and then I go Google all of my legal docs when I couldn't afford a lawyer. It wound up okay. It's like LegalZoom but worse. It puts a pin in place, and then I research who makes these parts, and you can go to Taobao or you can go on, I think Taobao is the best one, and then call them all. They mostly speak English. I'm sure in your network you have somebody who speaks Mandarin, but that's how I got on.
So I think there's lots of different areas, but I would also just emphasize the manufacturing. So like I feel like there's a lot of people that always have an idea, and they get very excited about the idea and what it's going to look like, and then at the very end they try to figure out, okay, how would I make it, and who needs to make it, and how do I do that? I think you get a lot of confidence once you really understand and figure that out. So whether it's calling the factories, looking at who's making similar products, whatever you have to do, it's a lot of sleuthing. I mean, thank God for the internet. I mean, that's how I found a lot of my first factories, and tried to get people to make stuff for me until I found the right small manufacturer, because none of the bigger guys would make something for someone who didn't have this idea, right? So you got to get really creative on that, because otherwise I think it'll be very hard to basically go further than just the concept. And you'll feel more empowered. And quite honestly, I come from the product side, but I fundamentally believe the best products are done when the designers and really understand the manufacturing. I think that's where you create a lot of value for everyone in the value chain. So.
We unfortunately have to wrap it up because there's a fantastic panel happening about a minute ago. So I think these folks are going to be around through the wine portion
Yeah.
of the evening, and you can ask questions.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I mean, the reason places like Mercy Corps, Northwest Women's Business Center, or Bill, any of these groups exist is you should reach out to them and talk to them because they can make introductions to you to other people who've been down this line. I mean, that's part of the reason we're all over here to get today, make the connections. We're gonna do a follow-up and try and create a way to connect everybody who's here today, and you know, we should all keep in touch. But there will be plenty of people around who will be able to help you with your next steps. And even if you don't have a clue, a lot of the best ideas start out with just a sort of an idea, and we'll make it work from there. We're going to move the cooked sous vide food to the kitchen, and Lisa's going to cut it open if anybody wants to try it. It's hot, it's cooked, 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes from frozen to ready to eat. So if anybody wants to go into the kitchen and cut it up and have a little bite, thanks.
And thanks to all the panelists.
Thank you so much, all of you. Amazing.